With 6 classes to choose from and 2 ascendancies per class, Path of Exile 2 affords you a ton of options for creating the character of your dreams. In this video today, I want to showcase my Sub-Zero Monk leveling build that utilizes tons of cold damage to freeze enemies and blow them up with lightning abilities from Charged Staff and Falling Thunder. It's my absolute favorite build right now and has easily overridden my Warrior as my main. If this is your first time on my channel, the way I do things is by upfronting the knowledge in my videos. So with that being said, the skills that I'll be using are Ice Strike, Wave of Frost, Glacial Cascade, Tempest Bell, Falling Thunder, Combat Frenzy, Herald of Ice, Hypothermia, and lastly, Charged Staff. We'll button all that together with the Invoker Ascendancy, focusing on frost damage and crits to bypass cold resist. It's a pretty straightforward build of building charges using Ice Strike, using Charged Staff to add ranged lightning damage, and ripping through wave after wave, blowing up big packs with Falling Thunder. Single target DPS is found in using Tempest Bell and striking that gong until the bosses are dead. Honestly, this build is stupid. It's so fun and probably will be tuned down. And there are absolutely better ways to approach this build, I'm sure. But this is what fits for me and my playstyle. So feel free to take parts of this and make it work for you. I always encourage people to play how they want, not how the internet tells them to. You can find the entire build typed out and linked below, broken apart by the first 3 acts and beyond. So click the link to Mobalytics for a handy reference guide. But that's the too long didn't watch this entire video, and if that's all you wanted to know, then please feel free to shut the video down and get back to frosting those kegs in Path of Exile 2. You can also navigate to any part of this video that interests you the most using the chapters about the timeline in the description. If you are heading out, and this video did indeed help you, then please don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe, as each one of those things helps me out in a huge way. Lastly, don't forget to check me out on Twitch, where I stream this game every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Let's get started on the best Monk Sub-Zero leveling build in Path of Exile 2. Loading into the game, let's take a look at our primary skills at the end game, as it were, and we'll take a look at what the breakout is from Act 1 to 2 to 3 and what have you. Starting off with our primary damage ability, it's going to be Ice Strike. This thing is awesome, converts 80% of our physical damage to cold. And basically, we're going to use this to warp around the map, more or less, to kill everything right in front of us. The third strike in the combo warps to the target and basically just does a ton of damage. But we're going to use Concentrated Effect because we don't care about the area of effect on this. We want to do more area damage. So we want to be able to have really nice, good damage with this Martial Tempo to increase that attack speed by 25%. And then lastly, Primal Armament to help supported skills deal 25% more weapon elemental damage, giving us just a real disgusting amount of DPS, even at this level, which is only 46. Another big frost ability that we'll be using is Wave of Frost, converting 80% of our damage to cold damage, and it gives us a nice big cone attack in front of us. What I really like about this is it just kind of really helps just dish out tons of freezing, as you can see right there. So we'll use Frost Nexus so that anytime we freeze something, it creates chilled ground, which just chills targets for us. And then lastly, it will have Ice Bite. So anytime that we do freeze something, our attacks gain 35% of damage as cold damage. So we're amping up that cold as much as possible. In addition to that, we'll be running Herald of Ice very early in this build, but it will help us that every time that we shatter a frozen target, it'll basically create an explosion that will do physical damage converted to cold damage, which is absolutely lovely. And then we'll have this help us by giving it clarity to help out with mana regeneration. This is a mana hungry build early in the game. But another big portion of this build is going to be Charged Staff and Falling Thunder. Charged Staff here, essentially what it does, I'm going to go ahead and press this little button. You can see it'll charge our staff and have it so that we can throw these waves of lightning damage. That is really crucial here. It gives us some range capability. The most important thing about Charged Staff is that it will imbue every single attack that we use, regardless of whether or not it is a lightning attack. So when we use Glacial Cascade, it will go ahead and imbue it with lightning. When we go ahead and use any other ability, it will imbue it with lightning, as I jump over to the next area to show you what that looks like. So this helps us out in giving us the capability to supercharge everything with lightning. Now, what we're going to do is we're also going to use power charges, and I'm going to talk about how we're going to get those. But we're going to use conduction so that every time we do it, it just gives shock. And shock is crucial because I'll talk about this in a sec with Combat Frenzy. Innervate here is going to make it so that attack gains 75% of damage as lightning for 3 seconds on killing a shocked enemy, which is going to happen all the time, and persistence. So now, whenever we convert our energy orbs into the charged staff, it will last for a lot longer, so we don't have to keep dumping our charges into this. Instead, we can dump our charges into this Falling Thunder, which will be a big damage vehicle for us. You can see right now it does attack damage 326%, which is just absolutely beautiful. But basically what we're going to be doing here with this one is using all these charges we're constantly going to have active, again, more on that just a little bit, and shooting these big, huge cones of lightning damage all over the place. And what you can see with Falling Thunder is it's our big charge expenditure. We're going to have tons of charges that we can just put into a charge staff, but we don't have to keep putting them in. Charge staff will last like almost a minute. What this does is it converts 100% of physical damage to lightning damage, which is a huge bonus. Projectiles pierce all targets and 25% more damage per charge consumed. Depending upon how you approach this build, that could be 5 total charges, which is 125%. That could be 7 total charges, which is 150%. It's a lot of charges, and 100% more damage if a power charge was consumed. Fires 3 projectiles per power charge. So if at 5, that's 15 little tendrils that come out, or it's 21. So you get a lot of really crazy capability out of Falling Thunder, and it is a lot of fun. So how do we really take advantage of that? Well, we use Combat Frenzy. Combat Frenzy will generate a frenzy charge for us whenever we freeze, electrocute, or pin an enemy. And we're going to be doing that, well, the first one all the time. Electrocute 2 will also be part of the combination, because Electrocute is an alien that interrupts the target's blah, blah, blah. Only lightning damage from hits with specific skills or effects contribute to electrocution buildup on enemies until they become electrocuted. Other sources of lightning damage will not build up towards electrocution. So if we build electrocution into this, we can turn this on. But our big primary source is freeze. And then we use perfusion so that it generates an additional charge. Which we're saying, hey, we're not using frenzy charges. You're right. We're using this passive to convert those frenzy charges into power charges, which then fuel the entire build. So it's cyclical. All the things that shock and all the things that do ailments, all that kind of fun stuff, contribute to everything in the build, especially freeze, which gives us a whole heap of charges. Then our other 3 abilities that I haven't gone into here are Tempest Spell, which we'll use for single target damage. You will basically build up stacks, cast it on the ground, and then hit it as much as you can with your normal attack like this. And it will just resonate and do damage in an area of effect around it. So we use Magnified Effect for more area of effect, Overabundance to make it so that we can stack these things. Now, this doesn't mean you're going to have multiple bells up. It means that the time in between one bell going down and the other one going up is a much faster turnaround. So if you stack up 4 little combo points down here, you'll cast Tempest Bell, you'll rip through the Tempest Bell, then have built 4 more combo points and just keep doing it. Then we'll use Rage. So every time we hit it, it will hit the enemy, our single target, and it will grant us 3 Rage. Remember, Rage increases our attack speed and our damage. You'll be getting disgusting stacks of this. Hypothermia in the end game to help reduce the cold resistance of things, and just supporting it with Heightened Curse to increase the effect, and Expanse to increase the area of effect and put it on a 6-second cooldown. So you can see it's going to be a much larger area of effect when we cast that bad boy. Our last ability here is Glacial Cascade, which we'll start with and we'll use the entirety of the build. But this is an ability that just kind of gives us some ranged cold damage that is really great, which you'll use a lot with Frozen Locust in the beginning. But Cold Infusion here, support attacks gain 25% of damage as cold damage, and Glaciation supported skills cause 50% more freeze buildup. So those are our skills, those are our support gems in the end game for this. But what does it look like when we're progressing through the levels? For the sake of saving me time and just making it a lot easier on you guys, I'm going to be showing you my Mobalytics site that has this build. So you can go ahead and take a look at this. But at Act 1, we're going to be focusing on really only a couple abilities: Glacial Cascade, Frozen Locust, Killing Palm, Falling Thunder, and Tempest Bell. Those are the only ones you're going to get access to. And once you unlock them, you'll just use them as you'll use them. Frozen Locust and Glacial Cascade will pretty much be the bread and butter of the build, with Falling Thunder being used once you unlock Killing Palm. But as you can see down here, we have everything all nicely packed away for you. So Falling Thunder will use Perpetual Charge again and Leverage, so that every time we freeze something, because that's going to be an immobilized enemy, we get 50% increased critical hit chance. That will help out once I talk about the Ascendancy. Frozen Locust here is going to help us out by just basically creating a little ice bomb that we can detonate with Glacial Cascade to help give us supported skills cause 50% more freeze buildup with Glaciation, and Deep Freeze, so increased freeze duration. Tempest Bell is going to have the same stuff with Magnified Effect and Overabundance that we saw earlier. And Glacial Cascade is still going to have Cold Infusion, and instead it's going to have Ice Bite. Killing Palm is going to be our generator for power charges until we get into that level 30 range. That's going to give us Combat Frenzy. So Killing Palm, we use this to cull enemies. It's a cool way to, like, you can cull bosses and it feels cool. So what we're going to do is use Profusion on that so it has a chance to generate more charges for us. And then Life Drain, just so we can use it as like a get out of jail free card to give us 12% life over 4 seconds. It's a cool thing to use. And our primary attack ability is going to be Quarterstaff Strike with Martial Tempo and Rage to begin with. You can put in other things if you so wish, but you're at level whatever. You will blitz through the game no matter what with all the other stuff here. You'll be able to use Quarterstaff Strike. And then once you get your Spirit Gem, you'll just unlock Herald of Ice as is. So that is your Act 1. That's your big focus there. Let's also quickly talk about what your passive tree looks like for Act 1. We're going to start down here with skill speed increase, come through here to grab Flow Like Water, come around. Flow Like Water here is going to give us Dex and Intelligence with 8% increased attack cast speed, and then Mindful Awareness for 24% increased evasion rating and max energy shield. Bring that back around here for Step Like Mist for more Dex and Intelligence and some mana regen, but some increased movement speed as well. Bring that down around here for freeze buildup and 5% extra cold damage. And then bring that through these things all the way over to our Power Within for some more power charge. So we'll have, rather than having 3, I believe we'll have 4 active for us with this one. But that is your first act. Let's now pivot into our second act. So Act 2 is where things are going to get pretty spicy for you. You're going to be able to swap a lot of stuff around. And don't worry, I have it all written down right here. So at level 14, you'll swap Quarterstaff Strike with Ice Strike. That's going to be the big primary damage dealer for the build. Then at level 22, you're going to swap Frozen Locust for Wave of Frost, and you're going to pick up Freezing Mark to help build freezing buildup on any and all bosses. I don't really have any set support gems for Freezing Mark. Use whatever you want. It's just kind of, it looked like a good one to put in. I'd rather use the freeze buildup on other support gems that stayed a more permanent fixture in the class. But what you will know, though, is that some of these support gems are going to swap around. So make sure you take a look at this list. I've kept in everything so that you can see, like, hey, this is what it's going to look like once you come into Act 2. But then you're going to push into these. So if you notice anything that has an overlap, like Ice Strike here has Martial Tempo and Concentrated Effect. Well, so does Quarter Strike. It's got Martial Tempo. You're just going to swap those out. So again, Quarterstaff Strike will swap out for Ice Strike, which will then swap in Martial Tempo in its place. Wave of Frost here is going to have Ice Bite and Frost Nexus because you're taking out Frozen Locust, which has Glaciation and Deep Freeze, and swapping some of those in over here to Glacial Cascade, which will have Cold Infusion and Glaciation. So it's a little confusing, but pretty much if you want to know what these will look like at the end, just click the Act 3 variant and you'll know, like, okay, there's no confusion here. This is what it's going to look like by the time you eventually get to this region, but that'll give you an idea of what the set support gems are like. So back here into Act 2, one thing I will say, depending on what level you get in Act 2, you should expect to be around level 31. And remember, you're going to get 4 passive points per level, right? Per act, because you're going to be able to get those weapon spec things. So you'll get 2 and 2 in Act 1, 2 and 2 in Act 2, 2 and 2 in Act 3, and then ad infinitum. If you get to 31 and you get an uncut skill gem that will allow you to access Charge Staff, you can get it on your build early, but we'll be taking the Keystone Resonance and Charge Staff and Combat Frenzy. Do not take Resonance until you get both Combat Frenzy and Charge Staff, or else you'll be converting all of your power charges and it won't help you out. So don't touch it yet. Once we get to Act 3, at the beginning of the end of Act 2, however it falls out, once you get Resonance and these other two going, you can do it, but I wanted to put a note here that you just don't jump into it right away. As far as our passive tree goes, we stuck over here with Power Within at the end of Act 2. At the end of Act 1. Coming into Act 2, we're going to come over here and pick up Echoing Frost for 30% increased elemental damage if you've chilled an enemy recently, and pick up some of these nodes here for some more elemental damage as you see fit. Also, we're going to go to Shattering here to help out with more freeze buildup. You can see that happens right here, 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 and here. And then we're going to come down through this branch and pick up Conservative Casting. This is going to help us out with mana regen and 8% reduction mana cost of skills, as well as these two right here. And then you're going to come over this region, over up and through here, and pick up Resonance once you pick up those other 2 skills we talked about. I just wanted to set it up so once we jump into Act 3, we can knock that out. But let's also now talk about our Ascendancy. So in Act 2, we'll be choosing our Ascendancy, correct? And what we're going to focus on first with the Ascendancy is the cold damage. So this is going to increase the magnitude of chill you inflict, which is what it is. But this is unfreezing enemies create chilled ground, which is cool, and gain 10% of damage as extra cold damage. It's just more damage in the build. We will eventually shift into Act 3 and grab Sunder My Enemies, and eventually down here and shatter them to the winds, and eventually and I shall rage. But we're going this branch because we want our critical strikes to, our critical hits, or crits basically, to ignore non-negative enemy monster elemental resistances. The reason we want this, and the reason, it doesn't matter what you do with Invoker, you just need this one more than anything because of the passive tree and how I've built it out. If you do not get this, you need to get stuff like this. Stuff that says damage penetrates 15% of cold resistance. We're bypassing all cold resistance with this build by stacking critical hit chance. Critical hit damage is cool, but we want crit hit chance, and we're not going to have enough crit hit chance when we first get to our first 2 Ascendancy points. So tapping into this is not worthwhile. That's why I figured just raw damage is a better route. You can go up here for more spirit, but again, this is not going to be as beneficial until you're later in the game when you have a body armor piece that has high enough evasion and energy shield to actually give you enough adequate spirit. Because this also says you cannot gain spirit from equipment as a trade-off. So it's a little tricky to go with this. And if you do decide to go with this one, I would say move the passive tree I've got around to pick up this passive, +2 evasion rating per 1 max energy shield on equipped helmet, and pick up this one over here if you decide to go that route. +1 max energy shield per 12 evasion rating on equipped body armor. That's the biggest one because that kind of plays in, I feel, but I'm not really sure how they work together. But I wanted to kind of point those out so that you can get as much benefit as you can. But we're going to again focus on Unbound Avatar here and I Shall Rage, and focus on and Scatter Them to the Winds for our Ascendancy. All right, you've made it to Act 3. Let's talk about skill gems. Pretty much everything is set in stone. Nothing is really going to change. You're just going to get access to tier 2 support gems, and you're finally going to be at the point where you can use Charge Staff and Combat Frenzy. So you want to get that active in the build. With Combat Frenzy active, you're now going to put Profusion there to help you generate more charges. And with your Charge Staff, you're going to want that to have Conduction to help support 100% more chance to shock. Innervate, so again, that 35% damage is lightning damage after you kill something that is shocked, and Persistence. And this is also the act when you can start to kind of socket in a third support gem socket. So Primal Armament onto our Ice Strike, Freezing Mark, again, put whatever you want there. It wasn't a permanent fixture on the build, so I didn't want to invest too much into it. Rage on my Tempest Bell that used to be on my Quarterstaff Strike, and now Shock Siphon on my Falling Thunder. Recover 4% of energy shield when a supported skill deals a killing blow to a shocked enemy, which we'll be doing tons of. Because remember, like I said, if I use Falling Thunder, it will have Charge Staff attached to it, which will do 100% shock. And it will also shock things all the time anyway. So you're going to have shock all over the place. Take advantage of those as you see fit. And now to talk about our passive tree here, we finished off by being just short of Resonance. So now we're going to pick up Resonance, and we're going to come down to this portion of the tree and pick up Killer Instinct, pick up Tenfold Attacks, pick up Immortal Infamy, and Immortal Thirst. Really, it's going to come down to you and your decision of what you want to do for the build. Do you need more survivability? Then go right here. These two are going to give you that survivability. Do you want more damage? Well, these two are going to give you more damage. But in addition to that, this is going to give you more damage because it's going to give you another power charge, and it's going to make it so that energy shield is going to help out. 20% increased energy shield if you've consumed a power charge recently. Keep in mind these two minor nodes too. They have increased power charge duration, just as a minor note. But another damage increase is this one, so our critical hit chance is increased here. So each one of these 10, 10, 10, and 25% increased critical hit chance. We know why we're increasing that, because we're in Act 3 now, right? We just did our Chaos Ritual, meaning we can choose Sunder My Enemies. Critical hits ignore non-negative enemy monster elemental resistances. So you can see how this all now comes together in Act 3. And you might have extra points to invest in this tree, but if you do, just go ahead and press the Endgame variant tab right here at the top. It's like another variant. Endgame, and that will help us give a bunch of different variations to this. So let's now talk about that Endgame build. So Endgame build-wise, the only thing that's really going to change for you is swapping off Freezing Mark with Hypothermia. And the reason here is that I like hypothermia because it immediately initiates a fight with cold resistance being lower. Of course, we bypass it with critical hits. Freezing Mark might actually be the better bet. I'm really more experimenting with hypothermia right now. So if you want to try Freezing Mark, by all means, go for it. But we use Heightened Curse here for that increased effect, and we use Expanse to increase the area of effect so we can use actually on groups of monsters, which is a really cool little ditty for us. But for our passive tree, and this is going to be now our endgame passive tree. So let's talk about this as a whole. And I forgot that the game's at the very bottom over there. So let's take a look at this as a whole. So we stopped over here having grabbed a critical exploit and these two branches, and then we have got resonance active over here. So we have some fun points that we can invest around. So we're going to come down over here to grab Blinding Strike for increased attack damage, 10% chance to blind enemies on hits, which isn't crucial. I've thought about building blind into this build by jumping into some of the support gems. If you have some key things you want to bring up with blind, by all means, let me know. So that is a route that you've got right there. And then we come over here for Staggering Palm for increased physical damage and increased critical damage bonus, because we are going to be doing critical damage. I don't want to focus on it 100%. I want to focus more on the chance, because I want the chance to help us bypass all of our cold damage. Any damage bonus that we get, great. The point of it is I want to try to bypass that cold as much as possible. Up here, we have a big branch or set of clusters for criticals. So this is going to be crit hit chance and 10 dexterity. This is going to be increased damage bonus with criticals. And then this is going to be increased crit chance and 30% increased damage if you've dealt a critical hit in the past 8 seconds. So we get a lot of benefit out of this. Some additional benefit too on these increased elemental damages if you didn't pick these up in the little quadrants around them. And we're going to swing down over here now to pick up a little bit more. So we're going to come through this for some attack damage and then pick up Manifold Method for increased amount of mana leech. We are very mana hungry. This can help us out. You could probably bypass this notable if you so wish, but also increased chance to inflict ailments against rare or unique enemies, which helps us stack elements on bosses so that we can hopefully get charges to bring up our staff. And then we have Serrated Edges, so 30% increased damage against rare or unique enemies and 10% increased hit chance for attacks as well. And then we're going to come into the quarterstaff line. We're going to take the left branch at the bottom and the left branch at the top. The right branch here is for stun buildup, so we don't care about that. The left branch, though, gives us freeze buildup. And then 30% increased defenses while wielding a staff, which is great. 30% increased freeze buildup. You're also going to have increased attack speed and knocks back enemies if you get a critical hit with a quarterstaff, which I'm not too crazy about, but it is what it is. I just hate knockbacks. Increased attack speed into 25 dex, 25% increased damage bonus with quarterstaves, and 25% increased accuracy rating. We're skipping this is damage bonus. We're instead going to pick up critical hit chance. This bottom thing is that quarterstaff skills that consume power charges count as consuming an additional power charge, which is nice. Don't get me wrong. I think if you've got the point, throw it in here. It's really a nice thing to have because basically it gives us a benefit of an additional charge for free. But I'm trying to, this build got really lean towards the end here. So I'm trying to think of ways to squeeze that in. If you can think of one, go ahead and let me know. It's probably an easy, here, you know what? Here, 10% less. We can go ahead, we can take out this right here and put it right there. And we're pretty much just like solved our issue there, right? This build gets a little wonky towards this end portion. So bear with me here because this is going to be very changeable, right? This is going to be something that we're going to move around as I play more in the end game and figure out things that might change and work a little bit better. And in addition to that too, we are bound to have a patch that's going to tone this thing down a little bit. Let's go ahead and just remove one of these elemental ones, 10% elemental damage for a free charge basically. But we're then going to branch down from this direction and make it so that we get a lot more damage while affected by a Herald. And we are using a Herald of Ice in this build. And we can get more damage out of it. And we're going to take the whole entire cluster, which is pretty rare for me, but we get 6% reduced reservation of Herald skills here, so we can get a little bit more Spirit online. This one here, 50% increased cold damage while affected by Herald of Ice, which is awesome. And then we're going to take this branch for more crit chance, more hit crit chance, and 10 intelligence. And then attacks have 1% increase to critical hit chance. What does that mean? Well, if we take a look at the actual game, when you look at your character, take a look at your staff, see how it says crit hit chance 10%? Well, that innately brings the implicit of your quarterstaff up by 1%, which is actually a very big boon for the character. It allows you to just kind of get, because all critical hit chance keys off of this number. It's multiplicative, it's not additive. What does that fucking mean? So if I say I got this node, 20% increased critical hit chance. If you're familiar with Diablo, then that is an additive crit hit chance. In this game, it's 20% increase of that number right there. So 20% of 10% is only 2. So it's going to be 12% crit hit chance if I only took that node. So this just gives me a whole flat 1% added on that is then multiplied by everything else. Because remember, this is 25% of 10%. If this is 11% or 12% or 13%, whatever the implicit value is here, it gets multiplied by all the other increased to crit hit chance that we've got. It's super convoluted, but trust me, it's a good node. Now, there is a little alternative to our final build that we can go with. And the alternative build that you can go with instead removes all this and comes into this. And what this does here, this gives us +2 max power charges. And each one of these minor nodes gives me 20, 40, then 60% increased critical damage bonus if you consumed a power charge recently. So we go from having 5 max power charges to 7. So we get a very substantial increase to our damage. It's going to be dealer's choice. Do you want more criticals or do you want more power charges? I'm going to play with both and see what I like more, and I'll update the build as it sees fit. As you can see here, we're over 1 point, but I'll fix that in due course. But that is your alternative direction for this build if you want to go that way. And there's also plenty of other ways to go here. And like I've said plenty of times in this video, use this passive tree as a guide on how to approach the passive tree for your character. So we've talked about skills, we've talked about passives, we've talked about the actual level progression. Let's take a look at our gear. Now, of course, like I've said before many times, you have this all set up in the Mobalytics here. Every single act is the exact same when it comes to the gear setup. It's just going to be dependent upon what you're looking for in that level. So it's all right here anyway. I've broken it apart upon the actual priority of ones that I think like, hey, you know what? Increased physical damage is an absolute ace priority on your weapon or armor. Look for these stats. So if you need the reference guide, it is there for you. So you can see here our weapon, the biggest focus we want to do here is on increased physical damage. Why? Because every single one of these says something about converting physical damage to lightning damage. Converts physical damage to lightning damage. Guess what? Converts physical damage to cold damage. I'm not going to lie to you. This next one's going to be the same thing. Converts 80% of physical damage to cold damage. And guess what Wave of Frost is? It's the same fucking thing. So you can put sockets into this. I bought this like this. Sockets into this to increase lightning damage. You can buy sockets to increase the cold damage, but it is not as good as just outright stacking physical damage, because physical damage is way easier to tap into, in my opinion. 20% increased physical damage from Runes of Iron. You put 2 in there, that's a 40% increase. This thing just becomes absolute bananas, which is a really stupid term. But in addition to that, we want to focus on attack speed with our staff. That's going to be very crucial because staves are not the fastest weapon. This has a 6% increased attack speed. I really ideally think you should look for 7 or higher. That's going to be really a sweeter spot. I know it's only 1%, but trying to stack as much as we can, I think, is the best way to approach this. Getting things like increased level of all melee skills is good, but just be wary that is going to start to suck down your mana. So just be wary of that. And also gaining life on enemy kill is always good. Getting mana on enemy kill is always good. If you get lightning damage, cool. If you get add cold damage, cool. If you get increased hit chance, amazing. But we really want to focus on that physical damage because everything is converted from there. For our armor, it's going to be pretty straightforward too. We're just going to be pretty much focusing on aspects such as increased evasion and energy shield. That's going to be absolutely crucial for us because that is all of our defense, right? Then outside of that, focus on your resists. Remember, every act you go through, you lose 10% resist as a penalty. So by the time you are in Act 3 Cruel, you have a -60 to your, roughly -60 to your resistances. So stack up as much resistance as you can early so that you can dodge frustration in the build. If you find yourself dying a lot, upgrade your weapon. It's your weapon that's holding you back. If you still are dying, then upgrade your chest piece. Really make sure that you're progressing your gear with you as you progress. The game is not going to be forgiving for you if you just forget every single piece of equipment that you've got. So making sure that we do all that is crucial. Again, energy, evasion and energy shield, we want that as a percentage. And then the flat bonuses are just as fine if you want to stick with those as well and look for resistances. When it comes to your gloves, I like to try to find some that do have attack speed on them. I did not get lucky with these, but I did get ones that have instead Mana Leech. Mana Leech is a really good one for the gloves because, again, you are a mana hungry build in the earlier portions of the game. But otherwise, just use the same logic. Lastly, here are our shoes. You want to get 15% increased movement speed or higher because we already get an innate 5% on our skill tree. So it just puts you at 20. It's really nice to move around the game very quickly. Rarity of items found is pretty cool. I find that like it's like super, I think damn man, like if I had 6% on an item, I feel like I just get so many more drops. The last piece of gear I want to bring up is a solar amulet. You're going to want to swap onto one of these as soon as you can, which is going to be roughly level 30. And you want to put this on because it's going to enable you to use both Herald of Ice and Combat Frenzy, because this is going to give me 11 spirit plus an additional 40 spirit. You need an additional 40 spirit to use just 30 spirit. Well, this is 30, this is 30, and then this is going to add an extra 10. So in total, you need 70 spirit. Right now, my character has 81. So we have 11 leftover points, which you could argue I wouldn't even need the solar amulet from. It just has an implicit of spirit, which is why I like it. You could use any amulet you want under the sun, as long as you get an additional total of, you just have a total of 70 spirit. So you're going to have 30 by the time you have to deal with this. Just get 40 more and you're good to go. That is the only other gear piece that is super dependent. The rest is, like I said, socket your jewelry around to fit the resistance that you're looking for with your build, and get other things that fit the other things that we've talked about, increased evasion and energy shield. Now, as far as your rotation goes, it's pretty straightforward. All you got to do is hold down left click. That's really like pretty much it. That's all you really would need to do. There is more to this, so I'm going to go through that. So holding down left click, you can see we're just kind of destroying through stuff, and we're building these power chargers in the upper left. Once we build to 5, we're going to go ahead and use Charge Staff. You can see they're swirling around me. And now Charge Staff is active. It has taken all 5 and converted them, and we can continue to build power charges. But we can see that right clicking, or just pressing left click, will shoot that wave in front of us. But if I right click, the wave still is there. If I use Wave of Frost, it's still there too. It will always be present with every single attack that we use. So when we come across packs of enemies, we can just hold down shift and left click and just kind of dance around all crazy like, whatever you want to do. Or you can go ahead and use Wave of Frost, get a bunch of things frozen, which helps out build more power charges, which we're going to use in a second. Oh man, I wanted to get 5 right there. And then eventually we'll use this lightning charge, or falling thunder, which does that, which is so gratifying because basically you're going to build up these charges nonstop. You get to 5 charges, you activate your charge staff, and you just rinse and repeat. That is your entire rotation as a as a Sub-Zero monk. But what if you want to do single target damage? Let's talk about that. So as far as our single target damage goes, really what we're going to focus on is Ice Strike, Tempest Bell, and Hypothermia. We're going to open up the fight with Hypothermia, pressing simple T, and that's going to lower the frost resistance out the gate. We're pretty much just going to do that and cast Tempest Bell once we get 4 combo stacks onto Tempest Bell. And then we focus on, rather than the boss hitting that bell, the bell will do the damage to the boss, because the boss will take damage from the Tempest Bell based off the amount of ailments that are hitting it. The bells damage enemies on impact and can be hit by your skills, creating a damage wave. Elemental ailments applied to the bell cause its shock waves to deal extra damage for its corresponding type. So once we charge staff the ability, our staff, and we are using charged staff, it will add shock into it, so it's even more damage. So let's go ahead and do this over here. Go ahead and use that, and just pretty much do this. Okay, we hit 4, we get the bell, and we'll just go ahead and hit the bell. It's kind of tricky to hit the bell, I'm not gonna lie to you. You can see it, sometimes I miss it. It's a personal problem. I also don't put it way back like this, like an idiot. But you'll just go ahead and build this up. We built up our 5 things. We're good to go. Watch out for your mana, like I didn't do right there. Also, if you just kind of do that too, it's just disgusting, man. And we just kind of keep rinse and repeat. Watch your mana. and we're good to go. So that is how you would do single target rotation with this build. So all in all, what are my thoughts here on this build? And I'm just going to be honest, I absolutely love it. I think it's a build that it allows every character to feel strong quickly. It is not gear dependent in the sense that it needs certain uniques. It does require a little bit of finessing to understand when to trigger things on the passives and the certain support orbs and stuff like that. But really, this build, and a lot of people that I've tried the build on my personal Discord, they've said, dude, it takes off immediately. And I think that's what's so fun about it. I was playing Warrior and I felt like every time I went into a new map, I had a higher level requirement, things were harder, I couldn't push through it. I have not struggled with a single thing with this build. Any boss I've died to was just, I was streaming, I was staring at chat, and I was an idiot. I have blitzed down every boss. And here's a compilation of me doing that. I'm just ripping down these bosses left and right. And this for me is just such a sick build because I get to really feel like I can do a lot of damage really crazy, really fast. But this will have its traps, its falling off points. You aren't the sturdiest. That's why we're focusing on energy shield and evasion. You have mana issues, and sticking with mana stuff is going to be a good thing to do if you need to. Eventually you won't need to, but at the beginning portions of the game, you definitely are going to want to do that. So make sure that you keep mana on the build if you need to, or you're having things that give you mana leech or max mana, whatever the situation is. Those are some pitfalls that you're going to find. But you're also going to find that you're going to blitz through so much stuff and you're going to have such a good time that I think this is probably the best beginner, intro into the game build to play, because it allows you to kill everything, get tons of gear, tons of resources, tons of orbs to then use on whatever character you want. And I think that's a pretty important thing, right? Like, think of Diablo 2. If you're starting a brand new season of Diablo 2, what's one of the classes that almost everyone rolls? It's a sorceress, and they go with a frozen orb because it's not very gear dependent, right? You can just blitz through everything, get a bunch of stuff, then gear up the character you want to play. And I think that's the cool thing about this build. It has such a great amount of accessibility. It has a really cool look to it, like freezing all this crap and then blowing it up with this really cool falling thunder. It feels so kick-ass. And again, I like that the monk in this game is themed more like, Avatar: The Last Airbender style of elemental play, and less like the Diablo monk, which is more of a holy character, right? Using holy damage. I just love that has how the Invoker feels. The Acolyte of Triula, I don't even know how I would go about a build like that. I've seen a lot of really cool ones, but for me, this build really just brings so many fun elements into the game and allows me to play with charges. Something that I wasn't doing on my warrior that I really wanted to, that really didn't feel very conducive to the character. This character has charges, and you can use a support gem to make our frost abilities actually be charge detonators. But the problem with that is it's not nearly as strong as Falling Thunder. Unfortunately, right now, the game kind of wants you to go as a lightning monk because there's so many passives that are geared towards lightning or shock or anything lightning related in the monk section, and not as many that are geared towards cold. But by combining the elements of Charge Staff and Falling Thunder with all the amazing elements of cold damage, you get an absolutely wrecking ball of a class in this Sub-Zero monk. But go ahead and let me know in the comment section below what you would change. Would you swap out different support gems, different skill gems, use different passives, whatever it is? Like I always say, use this guide as a blueprint to how you want to play a cold monk, not how I play the cold monk. I'm playing it one specific way, and I know it's not the best way. I know there are smarter people who make better builds out there who focus on the min-max of it, but this has got so much drippy, juicy flavor for me that I'm having a great time. And it's like, if you don't know how good the best build plays, this is the best build for you, type of thing. You're like, oh, I'm kind of naive to the millions of damage I could do. And I was playing Warrior, I'm like, oh, the game's kind of hard. Then I switched to this, I'm like, okay, maybe not so much. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.